files this report.
The call came in just before 4 o'clock this afternoon. The old Hartford Welfare Office building on Atlantic near High Street was on fire. 3 minutes after firefighters arrived, it escalated to a two-alarmer. The third floor of the abandoned structure was completely engulfed in flames.
This building has had 2 or 3 other fires in it. It's in a hazardous condition, and at this point, we are attacking the fire from the outside. Fire department terminology, surround and drown.
The fire chief decided not to send any men into the burning building, but the flames threatened the Hartford Board of Education building directly next door. Firefighters were sent inside the education building to prevent the fire from spreading.
Neighbors say the building right next door burned last summer, then again 2 weeks ago. They say both of these abandoned buildings are being used by homeless people as a shelter.
Oh, a lot of people coming in at night with bags full of cans and their clothes and kind of stuff like that. And they're hanging out in there at night. They sleep in there.
In the past, we have had problems with vagrants getting into this building and also this other building to the west of it.
The fire was brought under control a little more than an hour after firefighters arrived. The origin of the fire is still under investigation. Glenn Pearson, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Hartford.
As we mentioned at the...
A fire broke out on the third floor of the building. A resident says an electric heater fell on some clothes and burst into flames.
I had a small fire extinguisher and I reached for it and I was using it, but you know, I saw that the fire was on so large, you know, that I have to call the fire department.
No one was seriously injured. Authorities say the cause of the fire is under investigation.
Maybe to blame collapse. The firefighters who died apparently became disoriented in heavy smoke and ran out of oxygen in their tanks. 12 other firefighters were injured. Cause of the fire is under investigation.
Students at Yale...
From about a half a dozen windows on the third floor.
Noon. 3 firefighters died in the fire that gutted at least 9 floors of a 36-floor story building. The fire started last night on the 22nd floor and quickly spread upward. 5 officials say no one was apparently in the building at the time. They say there were no sprinklers on the 22nd through 29th floors. Firefighters poured water into the building from an adjacent high-rise. The cause of that blaze is still under investigation. Jennifer?
And in our area tonight, police have arrested a man they say is a multiple...
The deserts of Iraq, if you could look down and see it. Let me tell you.
Alarm blaze at a brick-making factory, and in Watertown, folks arrived back from vacation to a house in flames. But first, Hartford, where once again, as Kelly Fitzgerald reports, a fire has a skittish neighborhood wondering if an arsonist has struck again.
Same neighborhood, different type of fire.
Most of the fires on Morton Street, the origin has been outside on the rear porches or in the hallways. This didn't happen. This was in a dwelling unit where it started.
This afternoon's fire on Putnam Heights, though not termed arson, has reignited the fear that the city's firebug is back at work.
We don't know if this is connected or not, and it's under investigation.
This was the 5th fire in 2 weeks in a neighborhood ravaged by a series of arson fires, poverty, and drugs, where just this afternoon, police arrested 3 people on drug distribution charges.
There's some children involved. There's an infant involved on the 3rd floor. They're not going to be able to occupy the building now. The building's going to be shut down. There's too much damage.
Regardless of the cause, the result is the same. These families are faced with trying to find a place to live, and the city, in some cases, is faced with footing the bill.
Causes for expense as far as clothing, if that's burned, furniture, if that's burned, relocating the kids into different school systems, all right? And all over, it's a burden on the family.
Tonight, police are questioning 2 people in connection with the case. No arrests have been made. In Hartford, Kelly Fitzgerald, WTIC News.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ann Baldwin. Coming up on 11 at 11, we'll tell you how a New Year's Eve wedding was turned upside down when the groom was mistaken for a carjacker. We'll tell you why Connecticut residents are making a run for the border this year, hoping to save some money. And movie critic Lucy Mole tells us which films she thinks are 1992's top 10. But first, our top story tonight. The search for suspects intensifies tonight as authorities try to crack a string of arson fires in Hartford's Frog Hollow neighborhood. Residents are on the edge in the wake of the latest suspicious fire and say that they are fed up and they're moving out. Allison Clay is standing by live now in our newsroom with late details. Allison?
And no one was hurt, but the family that lived in the first floor unit is homeless tonight after fire destroyed their home.
The family that lived in this apartment in the Frog Hollow section of Hartford was not home when the fire roared through. Firefighters have stopped short of calling this latest incident arson, but close to a dozen other fires in the neighborhood have been deliberately set. A reward of up to $2,500 is being offered for information leading authorities to the persons responsible. But in the meantime, firefighters are frustrated by the rash that continues, and neighbors fear for their lives.
I'm worried to live here.
She's worried. She lives
Worried.
next
I'm
door neighbor.
married.
She
I
lives
feel
next door
bad.
to me.
This is too bad.
Some say they're moving out.
Sure, why not? I have all my kids growing up, and I brought them up here. When I came here, my kids were small. They're all growing up. I got nothing to be staying around here for aggravation.
3 people, 2 of them children, were in the apartment above the fire. Maria Cruz helped them get out by alerting them when she smelled smoke.
Tonight, fire officials tell us they may have 2 suspects in this latest fire, but won't give further details. The family that lived in the apartment is staying in a Red Cross shelter. Authorities are continuing to question residents about what they may have seen prior to this afternoon's blaze. Ann?
Allison, why has it been so tough for investigators to gather information?
Well, Ann, a fire marshal on the scene says that residents fear retaliation from the arsonist and are afraid that someone may come, and they're hoping that someone may come forward with the information. But since they haven't, that leaves the investigators with very little information to go on about who's responsible in these arsons.
All right, tragic story. Hopefully they'll have some suspects soon. In other news tonight, 2 people are under arrest after an abandoned baby was now live with the rest of the story. Pat?
Well, and moments ago, the last fire truck just pulled away. They've been out here since about 2 o'clock this afternoon. What they're doing now is boarding up the house so that no one goes in. All that is left of this 3-family house is just about a shell here on 153 Capon Street. It's been a horrifying day not only for the tenants who were trapped inside, but for the neighbors who stood by and watched as they jumped to safety. Neighbors stood by in disbelief as flames ripped through this 3-story home in the East End, taking the life of 23-month-old Johan Rollins and critically injuring his 2-week-old baby brother.
It was that 2-week-old baby. They caught the blanket instead of the baby. The baby hit the ground. Then she jumped out the window.
Neighbors say those caught inside were forced to jump from a 2nd-floor window, one on the side of the house, the other in the back. This man held out his arms, catching children trapped inside.
Me and my brothers was trying to, we was catching them as they was coming out of the house, jumping out the window and catching them so they could break their fall from hitting the pavement.
Neighbors living across the street remembered hearing screams to throw the kids inside out of the window.
I saw a wrapped-up bundle being dropped out the window, and just as it got to the people's arms, the baby rolled on the ground.
This house can accommodate 3 families, but the owner says only 2 families were renting, one on the 1st floor, the other on the 2nd. It's a good thing the 3rd floor was vacant, otherwise there could have been many more injuries. The owners have insurance, but their home that is now gutted really isn't their concern.
They're tenants that we know, and we have a very close relationship with them, and we are concerned, as to what happened to them.
Well, we have learned what has happened to them. Actually, 2-week-old Kevin Rollins was taken to the hospital. He is now in satisfactory condition. He was treated for smoke inhalation. His mother, Valerie, and her boyfriend, Mark Ash, were also upstairs. They were babysitting 2 other children, one 4-year-old, another 6-month-old. All of them are in satisfactory condition. And 2 firemen were also taken to St. Francis, and they are also being treated and released. Dan?
Pat, a very tragic story. Is there any idea tonight or any word as to a cause?
As of now, I just talked to someone about 10 minutes ago. They do not have a cause. They might have one later on. Of course, we'll keep you posted.
We sure will. Pat, thank you for that live report. In other news tonight, a Connecticut News exclusive investigation.
Look at shortly after 2 o'clock at the Capon Street house on the city's north end. Authorities say 23-month-old Johan Rollins was killed in that fire. His 2-week-old brother Tevin is now hospitalized in critical condition. There is still no word what exactly touched off that blaze. In other news, heroic efforts to save her kids from inside that burning house failed. Jordan and the children died in that blaze, but Her memory lives on. Today, she was named the only Connecticut
or making a cushion for them so when the lady would throw her kids out, they wouldn't fall to the ground.
Many of the people came and was trying to climb up the house to the second floor to try to get them out, and they were telling them to jump and to throw the kids out the window. It was very scary, and I was hoping everybody got out safely.
But not everyone did make it out safely. Once firefighters arrived, they pulled Valerie Rollins' other son, 23-month-old Johan Rollins, out of the thick smoke.
And they found him after a search of, I'd say, maybe a minute. Handed the child to me. I brought him down in the basket, started CPR, and turned him over to EMS personnel that were on the scene.
As friends and neighbors try to deal with the shock of this tragic situation, these firefighters will also go through a stress debriefing to cope with the death of a child.
I've been doing this for over 25 years now, and every time you get one like this, it bothers you.
Rollins, the 3 children, and a boyfriend, 24-year-old Mark Ash, were taken to St. Francis Hospital, where they're listed in satisfactory condition after suffering smoke inhalation. 2 firefighters were also treated for smoke inhalation after battling the flames for over an hour. Now the cleanup begins as investigators sift through the rubble to find the cause of this tragic fire, a blaze that has ripped apart a family. In Hartford, Virginia Chow, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
And fire investigators tell us tonight there was a delay in their notification of this fire. They said had they known earlier, they may have been able to save much more of the building. A fire in a Norwich nursing home forced all 160 patients to scramble out of the building this morning. It was a 2-alarm blaze at the Hamilton Pavilion Convalescent Home at 10 a.m. The fire started in the kitchen and jumped into the vent system and then up onto the roof. A resident and a firefighter were slightly injured. Officials say all but a few of the clients will be able to return to their rooms tonight. The first black ever to serve on the Supreme Court.
On Albany Avenue this afternoon, 2 homeless men who reportedly were inside the building at the time did get out safely. They were treated at the scene for smoke inhalation. The blaze is now under control. These are the people who apparently were living in the building. The cause of the fire at this hour remains under investigation. Well, lots of folks around Connecticut are still
which they sought shelter became engulfed in flames and thick black smoke. The men were trapped on the second floor. They had to be rescued by firefighters. They were taken to the hospital and treated for smoke inhalation. Blaze broke out at around 3:45 this afternoon at the corner of Main Street and Albany Avenue. No word on how the fire started, but investigators are looking into reports that a couple of children were seen running away from the building as the fire did break out.
The whole first floor was fully involved, heavy fire out the back and heavy smoke. And the guys made an aggressive attack in the front. 2 engine companies knocked all the fire out. We protected the porches for extension, but it just ran up through the walls of the building, and the next thing we had fire on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor also.
The building's been abandoned for a couple of years now. Neighbors say it is well known as a drug hangout. An elderly Southern...
For shooting his parents
out of the building at Main Street and Albany Avenue. Nobody was hurt. Witnesses tell fire marshals they saw some kids coming out of the building after the fire started. An 83-year-old Norwich woman is dead after a...
2 hours to bring the 5-alarm blaze under control. 7 injuries were reported. No word on how the blaze started. We have a lot more to tell you about.
Young people and all Americans that we war with the Iraqi people. We hope the regime